Some men walk into a room and nobody challenges them. No arguments, no disrespect, no testing. Not because they're loud, not because they're aggressive, but because something about them feels final. You've felt this before. A presence that makes people hesitate. A calm that makes others lower their voice. Most people think power comes from dominance, or status, or fear. Carl Jung saw something deeper. He believed real power comes from what stays hidden, from the parts of the mind most people never face. And once you understand why some men are never challenged, you'll realize power isn't built on force. It's built on something far more unsettling.
Most people think confidence comes from knowing who they are. It doesn't. It comes from knowing who they're not. Carl Jung believed the strongest individuals aren't the most expressive, they're the most integrated. Every human carries a hidden side. The impulses you suppress, the thoughts you don't say out loud, the traits you were taught to label as wrong. Jung called this the shadow. Most people run from it. They try to be harmless, predictable, easy to approve. And that creates weakness. Because when you deny parts of yourself, they don't disappear. They leak. Through insecurity, through passive aggression, through over-explaining. People sense this instantly. The men who are never challenged have done something different. They've faced their shadow. Not acted it out, not justified it, but acknowledged it. That creates inner stability. When you know your capacity for aggression, ambition, or dominance, you don't need to prove it. You don't posture, you don't react. Your nervous system stays calm because nothing inside you is fighting for control. This is why harmless people are challenged constantly. They're easy to test. There's no edge, no consequence behind their boundaries. But when someone has integrated their darker traits, there's a quiet message in their presence. I know what I'm capable of. And that message doesn't need to be spoken. Jung warned that a person without a shadow is naive, not virtuous. Naivete invites pressure. It signals vulnerability. Others push to see where you break. This isn't about being dangerous. It's about being whole. Wholeness creates gravity, and gravity changes how people behave around you. That's the psychological foundation most never build.
Most people believe being challenged is a sign of strength. It's not. It's a sign that others sense uncertainty. Watch how people test boundaries. They interrupt. They joke a little too far. They question decisions that don't need questioning. This doesn't happen to everyone. It happens to people who signal inner conflict. Jung understood that the mind communicates long before words do. Your posture, your pacing, your silence, all of it leaks information. Here's the illusion. People think respect comes from moral clarity, from being good, from being reasonable. But reason invites debate. Goodness invites negotiation. The men who are never challenged don't negotiate their presence. They don't rush to explain. They don't soften statements to sound acceptable. They don't defend themselves against imagined threats. And that unsettles people. Because most challenges aren't about truth. They're about probing. Can I move this person? Can I pull a reaction? Can I destabilize their frame? When someone carries unresolved inner tension, those probes get rewarded. A raised voice, a nervous laugh, a long explanation. But when there's nothing to hook into, the testing stops. Jung believed that what you repress gains power over you. And what gains power over you shows up in your behavior. This is why people who deny their shadow feel exposed. They're constantly managing an image, and image management is exhausting. The men who aren't challenged don't manage an image. They've accepted their contradictions, strength and restraint, calm and aggression, compassion and cold clarity. This balance creates something rare, psychological solidity. Others feel it immediately, and instinctively they step back, not out of fear, out of recognition. They sense there's nothing to push against. And when there's no leverage, challenge loses its purpose.
If this feels uncomfortable, good. That means you're seeing it. Most people never notice these signals. They live inside the surface layer, reacting, explaining, defending. But once you spot the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start noticing who gets tested and who doesn't. Who walks into a room and a noise fades, and who has to earn attention every time. If this is already clicking, you're ahead of most people. You're seeing what usually stays unspoken. And if you want more of these psychological breakdowns, the kind that sharpen awareness instead of feeding motivation, take a second to support the channel. Not because you're told to, but because you recognize value when you see it. Now, let's go deeper. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Once you see the training, you can't unsee it. And that's where most people freeze. Because realizing you are conditioned is uncomfortable. It strips away comforting lies. It forces one brutal question. If this wasn't my choice, whose was it? From childhood, you were rewarded for obedience. Teachers praised compliance, not curiosity. Jobs promoted reliability, not independence. Society clapped when you stayed predictable. Not evil, not accidental, just efficient. A trained mind is easy to manage. But here's the turning point most people miss. Freedom doesn't start with rebellion. It starts with non-reaction. The system expects anger. It expects outrage. It expects you to shout, argue, prove, explain. That's still training. Real detachment looks boring from the outside. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing approval. You stop reacting on cue. Watch powerful people closely. They don't rush. They don't overshare. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They let silence do the work. Because silence breaks conditioning. When you pause instead of reacting, you regain control. When you choose restraint instead of impulse, you rewrite patterns. When you stop performing for validation, you step outside the cage. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people sense this shift in you before they understand it. They feel it in your slower responses, your calmer presence, your lack of emotional leakage. Some will respect it, others will resent it. That's how you know it's working. Because a trained mind needs you predictable. An untrained one makes people uneasy. This is why independence feels lonely at first. You're no longer playing the same psychological game. You're not louder. You're not aggressive. You're just harder to move. And that's real power. Not dominance, not intimidation. Self-command. So here's the final question I'll leave you with. If you were trained to think, feel, and react on command, what would happen the moment you stopped? Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. Because the most dangerous person in any system isn't the rebel. It's the one who can no longer be programmed. And once that switch flips, there's no going back. If this made you uncomfortable, good. That's awareness waking up. Stay sharp.
Here's where things get dangerous. Quietly. Once you stop reacting on command, something strange happens. Life slows down, but you move faster. While others panic, you observe. While others explain, you decide. While others chase, you position. This is the quiet advantage no one teaches. Most people think power looks like force. It doesn't. Power looks like options. When you're no longer emotionally hijacked, you see leverage everywhere. When to speak and when not to. When to agree and when to walk away. When to act and when to let time apply pressure. You stop needing to win every interaction. You start choosing which ones matter. That alone puts you ahead of 90% of people. Because here's the truth. The world isn't run by the loudest voices. It's run by the most composed ones. People who can sit in uncertainty without flinching. People who don't rush to fill silence. People who don't broadcast their intentions. Silence isn't weakness. It's camouflage. And once you understand this, you notice something else. People reveal themselves when you stop filling the space. They talk more. They justify. They expose motives without realizing it. You're not manipulating anyone. You're just no longer interrupting their patterns. That's awareness, not aggression. But here's the part most won't like. When you stop being easy to read, some people will try to provoke you back into your old self. They'll test your patience, your ego, your need to be understood. This is the final exam. If you react, they regain control. If you stay calm, they lose their grip. And slowly, without announcements or drama, your position changes. You become the one others adjust to, the one whose presence alters the room, the one who doesn't need to assert authority because it's felt, not feared
not forced. Felt. That's the difference between dominance and command. Dominance demands attention. Command attracts it. So if you've made it this far, understand this. You don't need to change who you are. You need to remove what was installed. The impatience, the over-explaining, the reflex to react. Strip those away, and what's left is dangerous. Not to others, but to any system that depends on you staying asleep. And once you taste that kind of control, you'll never trade it for noise again. Stay disciplined, stay unreadable, and most importantly, stay awake.
No one tells you this part. When you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, when you stop playing the role you were trained for, you lose people. Not because you became cruel, not because you changed your values, but because you stopped being useful to their expectations. Some friendships were built on access to your emotions. Some relationships survived only because you were predictable. Some people felt powerful simply because they could pull your strings. When the strings disappear, so do they. And that can feel like loneliness, but it's not. It's withdrawal. You're stepping out of emotional dependency loops that once felt normal. Here's what happens next, and this is critical. Your standards rise quietly. You stop overgiving. You stop chasing closure. You stop investing in people who only show up when it benefits them. You begin to value consistency over intensity, respect over attention, depth over approval. This is where real separation happens, because most people don't want growth, they want comfort, and growth makes them uncomfortable. So they'll label you cold, distant, different. Let them. Those labels are survival language, not truth. You're not colder, you're clearer. You're not distant, you're selective. You're not different, you're no longer deluded. And here's the paradox. The fewer people you let in, the more weight your presence carries. Silence becomes noticeable. Words become deliberate. Actions become final. You're no longer everywhere, but when you show up, it matters. This is the cost of waking up. Not isolation, alignment. And alignment attracts the right kind of power. People who respect boundaries, situations that reward patience, opportunities that don't require you to shrink. You didn't lose your place. You outgrew it. And once you understand that, eventually, to what moves with clarity instead of noise.
Here's the part most people never reach. Once you've detached, once you've stopped reacting, once you've outgrown the role you were trained to play, you don't become aggressive. You become unreadable. Your emotions stop leaking. Your intentions stop broadcasting. Your presence stops asking for permission. This is real control. Not dominance, not intimidation. Control. You listen more than you speak. You pause longer than expected. You decide slower, but act once. People feel it before they understand it. They don't know why conversations shift when you enter. They don't know why they explain themselves around you. They don't know why your silence feels heavier than their words. That's because you're no longer playing social chess for approval. You're not trying to win. You're observing. And observation is power. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are predictable because they were trained to be. Trained to seek validation. Trained to fill silence. Trained to justify their existence. You stepped out of that conditioning. So now you operate on a different frequency. Not louder, not faster, calmer. And calm unsettles people who rely on chaos to feel important. This is why some will test you, push boundaries, fish for reactions. Don't bite. Every time you don't react, you teach them where you stand. Not with words, with gravity. Now, a quiet warning. Control isn't about manipulation. It's about self-mastery. If you use this awareness to dominate others, you lose it. The moment ego enters, clarity exits. But if you use it to choose better people, better timing, better battles, you become rare, and rarity creates leverage. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove it. Those who notice, notice.
Those who don't never mattered. So here's the real ending. You weren't trained to fail. You were trained to stay small. And the moment you saw it, the training lost its grip. If this shifted how you see people, how you see power, how you see yourself, stay close. Not for motivation, for awareness. Because once you see the structure, you stop being controlled by it. And nothing is more dangerous or more free than someone who understands the game and chooses silence instead.